Anomalies. Anomalies.
Anomalies.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. This is a program about things seen out of the corner of one's eye, about shadows and what lurks in those shadows. This is a program about the unexplained and the unexplainable.
All right, welcome to another episode of Anomalies. Now, usually when we do this show, Dave Jinks, who's with us today, my broadcast partner for however many years we've been doing this, 12 years, Dave? Something like that.
I think 2011, maybe 2010. So yeah, about 11.
Yeah, it's gone over that. So
Yeah.
much to do while you're having fun. Anyway, we usually do this with both of us in Olympia, Washington, but today I am not in Olympia, Washington. I am in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, a place I'd never been before. And one of the reasons I was drawn here is I'm kind of a Civil War history person, but I'm also kind of a paranormal guy. And so all the things I'd heard about the Ghosts of Gettysburg drew me here. And we're very fortunate to have Lon Strickler, who is I don't know, Lon, how would you characterize yourself? What kind of titles would you use?
I just call myself a Fortean researcher. I mean, I've got a lot of different things I do, but
Yeah,
that kind of covers it all.
yeah. Well, that's good. We'll go with that. But we're really fortunate to have Lon with us tonight. And he's actually not too far from where I am here in Gettysburg. So maybe a starting point would be it's an origin question. So how about an origin question for you? How did you get drawn into the paranormal? And are there aspects of the paranormal you're drawn into?
Well, my initial recollection of the paranormal actually happened in Gettysburg.
Really?
I used to live just east of Gettysburg. I was born and raised in Hanover, Pennsylvania, which is east of Gettysburg. And as a kid, I used to ride my bike on 116 and head into Gettysburg. It's about a 10, 12-mile jaunt every time. But I spent a lot of time there, even as a young kid. So I was around 9 years old one summer afternoon. And, I was interested in the history of the Gettysburg and, not really that much as far as the paranormal history, though. You hear things here and then. Well, this is back in the late 60s, actually. So I was in an area this particular day. It was around July, I think. It was in the area what they call the Valley of Death, which is between Little Round Top, Devil's Den, and the wheat field.
Yeah, I was there today, all three of those places.
And it's it was very heavy fighting there on the second day, a lot of casualties. And it's an area that's very, very imprinted with spirit energy. And but I was about 9. I was riding my bike on that access road you no doubt went on, and it was just like all of a sudden a TV screen opened up on me. And for about 30 seconds, I was literally witnessing battle. I was watching soldiers and hearing cannon fire, gunfire, smelling gunpowder, the whole 9 yards, actually. And, I just, I'm dumbfounded, wondering what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my initiation, though I had always thought that there was something different about me. I thought there, not really knowing what it was. But after that occurred, I spent more time on the battlefield, and I actually had a few experiences, and it continued on. And in fact, back when I was going into high school, I was actually conducting paranormal investigations. And, back that time, hell, nobody was doing that. You tell somebody you're a paranormal investigator, you get that funny look like you're crazy or something.
Yeah, we've had that funny look before.
Yeah, and we all get it. And but back then it was just nobody knew about it or said much about it. So
Let me go back and ask you a question about the TV screen, because I find that kind of interesting. So were you actually seeing like it. Yeah, describe that a little bit more. I'm trying to
Well, it was just like
visualize
a big screen opened up in front of me. Was it a portal? Was it a wormhole? I don't know what it was. It was some type of rift in time. I don't know what it was exactly, but within that area, I could see it was almost like I was looking on the battlefield. And it was pretty horrific when I was watching. I was scared. I didn't know if I had gone accidentally walked into something, but I was firmly in this time, the present time, though I could actually view what was going on. So, but that lasted about 30 seconds and stopped. And I'll be honest with you, I have never had anything like that happen to me since.
Really, that's interesting to me.
I've had a lot of, I'm an intuitive. I do remote viewing now. I'm trained remote viewer. I've been involved with spirit rescue, distant healing, remote healing, and a lot of other aspects of the paranormal and clearings and such. But that particular type of activity has never happened again. And I've spent a lot of time on battlefields over the years, and that's just never occurred again.
So it was kind of this is Dave. It was kind of a window into, as if that battle that you were viewing had occurred at that very spot. So it was kind of looking a window back, looking into time. Okay, I just want to be clear. That's
what it was like. I mean, it was just like I was looking back at it, a Civil War battle. I mean, it was very similar to what I had thought it would look like, even though I was only 9, but it was pretty horrific. I mean, it was, you saw dead everywhere. So yeah, absolutely.
Was there a feeling, I mean, as part of if it was a message to you or just like you said, an opening of a rift in time, a wrinkle, a portal, whatever you want to call it, was there a message that came with it to you, or were you just a kind of a passive observer?
No, I was just an observer.
Okay. So do you think it was an accident? I mean, there's no way to know, but was it just you, because of the way your brain is as an intuitive, did you just happen to catch a piece of it when your brain was in the right frame of mind, or was there a particular, it sounds like there was a lot of emotion. I know that emotion, at least the psi researchers, consciousness researchers say that emotion, of course, plays a big part in, creating or supporting these types of phenomena, so that you were seeing horrific scenes of battle in action.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just like a regular day, and this occurred. I mean, what did it happen? Did it happen to be around the time? Well, I don't think it was around the time on July. Well, that would have been July 2nd if it was the actual date of the battle, but I don't think it was July 2nd. In fact, I know it was because the battlefield would have had a lot of people then, and that area didn't have really a whole lot of people that day. So it was later in the summer, I'm pretty sure. And, but no, I was, I don't think there was anything special. I just happened to hit something at the right time, I think. A lot of people do see that. I mean, almost like residual and seeing like
residual haunting.
Hauntings and such, with soldiers will continuously march and it'll rewind and happen again. Now, I don't know if it was that, because that seemed pretty damn real to me. And the fact that I was hearing gunfire and cannon fire and smelling gunpowder, and it was just horrific. I mean, that was 30 seconds of shock to me. And when it ended, I'm quite honest with you, I don't know what I did. I can't remember what I did.
Tell anybody, Lon? Did you tell anybody about what happened?
I told a few friends. I never told my parents about it. And in fact, I don't think my parents had any clue of what kind of, that I was an intuitive or I had any type of abilities. There have been people in my family that have had abilities. They were mostly female. Well, they were all female. And I've never, but my mother and father never had a clue that I know of. But they pretty well allowed me to do what I wanted to do back then. And, we could go onto the battlefield at night back then. And my friends and I would used to go out there and camp on the battlefield, actually. And you can't do that now, but we used to do it then. And, I spent a lot of nights out there. Saw a lot of weird stuff.
Well, what I find, before we move on, what I find interesting about these reports, and you hear these types of reports all the time in the paranormal. This just happens to be focused on one specific event or one time period and one place, perhaps. But a skeptic would say, well, that's just a hallucination. That's just imagination or something. But hallucinations, you ask any medical professional, they'll say they tend to be in states that are considered febrile or feverish. They're not clear. It's like when you have a high temperature, you're very out of it and woozy. And I'm assuming this was a very clear thing. You felt completely lucid, fully conscious. And that, to me, is what makes these types of experiences extraordinary, because they're not typically feverish kinds of, foggy memories. They're very clear and they stick with you for forever. And this has been, how long when was this?
Oh, this was in 1960, 67, 68.
Oh, yeah. You're talking 40, 50. That'd be 50 plus, 50 years roughly.
About 53 years ago.
And as kids, we all have, the sicknesses where we got high fever or whatever. You don't remember anything from that time a week after you're well, let alone 5 decades later. So I want to make that distinction, is that these types of events are, they're extraordinary because of this lucidity that accompanies it. That's what impresses me about them, at least.
Well, quite honestly, even since I've started working with people and having clients and such, and working with areas of possible possessions or other type of hauntings or infestations, my vision of events is pretty clear, pretty lucid. I can go into a location and pretty well get a good sense of what's going on. Am I clairaudient? Am I clairsentient? Sentient? I don't know. I've never really thought about that. I've had people tell me that I could be all three, clairvoyant as well. I don't know. Though I did, after I learned how to remote view, I was actually trained by someone who worked for MI6 and retired from there. And I took 6 months of training, and then, I basically have been kept up with since then. But, that kind of made things more clear as well. So, it was something that I combined with my abilities to use, in cases and investigations that I was involved with.
And that's a quite a potent combination there too, is to have an innate ability as an intuitive, but then focus your intent and your skill with something like remote viewing, which for a lot of us is not, I've never considered myself a good, meditator by any stretch. And so to me, sounds like a really hard thing to do, to put
anybody can learn remote view, to be honest with you. It's, it doesn't take any special abilities. It's a matter of being able to
focus, though, and a lot of us can't.
Well, yeah, you use your subconscious side of your brain, part of your brain, to focus on the actual target. And you gotta learn how to go through the steps and such. It's much easier when you're monitoring or doing with a group. Though I have the ability now to do it mostly on my own.
And have you remote viewed any part of Gettysburg then?
I have.
That's what I was going to ask next.
Yeah, I know I scooped Dan because I knew he was going to ask that.
Well, you know me well enough. One thing I'm thinking we ought to mention here, you and I and Lon are kind of in this Gettysburg thing. There'll be people listening to this who'll say, yeah, I think I heard something about something called Gettysburg. So I'm feeling kind of a need to identify what went on here. And not that you need a history lesson or people need a history lesson, but I was just struck today by some of the things I saw, that from July 1st through the 3rd of 1863, there was one hell of a fight here. So much so that over 50,000 casualties, and not every one of those were just killed on the battlefield. Some were wounded, then died. There were 50,000 people that died here.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the fighting took place within the town of Gettysburg.
Uh-huh.
So that's huge. That's a huge context, I think, to talk about, so that people who are listening to this get a sense of what this area is all about.
I think people who live around here kind of take it for granted.
I bet they do.
But when, I never really have. I mean, the place is imprinted with the actual battle itself to the degree that, I've been to a lot of battlefields over the years, in the United States, and that were associated with, the Revolutionary War and with the War of 1812 as well. And I have never been to any place that has such energy and, it is. When you walk in here, anybody who's sensitive at all, they will feel it immediately. They'll feel it before they even get here. I have talked to people who said, I'm driving towards Gettysburg. I'm 20 miles out, and I can start to feel it already. I don't know what it is, and it is. I mean, it just spreads out all over the area. And I think, one thing about Gettysburg, which is what I think is a bit, though it was a lot of activity, a lot of death, a lot of destruction, is the geology of the place is pretty unique. Because a lot of the bedrock really sticks out. If you were at Devil's Den, you saw a perfect example of that. The granite and the limestone is just visible, and there's quartz there as well. So you got three types of compounds, three types of stone that are conducive to spirit energy, and there's a lot of springs as well in this area. So. Yeah, it's almost like the perfect storm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting physical aspect of it that could play. We always ask, what about these places? What is it about them that is conducive to the Lon used the word imprinting, which I think is perfect. The imprinting of certain emotions or actions, history of humans interacting. And I think that must play a key part in it, although I haven't really seen any compelling, analysis of what types of composition of, earth and different minerals, whether there's something that you can use to predict, but it certainly does seem to coincide a lot, doesn't it? That you get these kinds of, this terrain and these hot spots, so to speak.
Well, there's a lot of things that happen here that just don't occur in other places. For those, I don't know if you guys watched the movie Gettysburg, but when they were filming that movie, and I was on set as well, because cool. I did some of the contribution to the film, and I was talking to a lot of different people that were extras, and they had reenactors actually camping on some parts of the almost like a reenactor would do, but they had people staying there on the battlefield who were set up in campsites and such. And it was interesting, and I've heard this before from reenactors, that, they'd be, just for example, there was a couple of guys from Mississippi who were there, and they were telling me one day, I was sitting down there talking to them, they said, the other day we were sitting here, and we saw some guy walking between the tents. And he acted like, he was, but he looked like he had just been through a battle. And, he waved at us and said hi and this and that. But then we saw him walking away. And he just literally vanished in front of our eyes. It's that kind of stuff. There was one other guy. Oh, my God. Another guy who was, he and his wife were actually bivouacked there during a reenactment. And they woke up to a soldier laying in between them.
Really?
Yeah, stuff like that. It's bizarre.
Yeah,
but,
that would be
the whole area, I mean, you really can't get away from it anywhere in the Gettysburg area, because the battlefield itself really extends beyond the town and beyond the battlefield. Actually, there were a lot of areas that had battles before Gettysburg, like Hanover, for example, where I live at. There was a battle the day before before Gettysburg, on the way to Gettysburg. In fact, if you're a history buff, it's the battle that kind of sent Jeb Stuart further east than what he was supposed to go. And he just never ended up at Gettysburg until the end of the second day. So, he was kind of the right hand for Lee. And, his reports and his scouting of the Union movements was just not existent. There were a lot of skirmishes like that before Gettysburg. So, it's just a lot. It's just the whole area just full of this energy.
So one thing I'm compelled to ask, and I think this is not just exclusive to Gettysburg, but probably a lot of different places. You've had a bunch of different opportunities to witness, I'm guessing, both apparitions and more residual haunting kinds of things. Would that be a fair statement to make?
Oh, sure. I've seen both. Yeah.
Okay. So explain those. What are they? Why are certain things imprinted? And I'm thinking more of the residual hauntings. Why are certain things imprinted upon the environment and certain other things aren't? Yeah, go ahead.
It's something I guess we just don't really understand. I mean, we've got a lot of good theories about it. Imprint energy is it's just like something that's, you say residual, and that's exactly what it was. And even after 150 some years or so, it's stuff like that will stick around. You see these videos that people take, especially at nighttime, where they will see a soldier walking around a cannon.
Right.
And that video is not exclusive, because I know exactly where those cannons are at, because it's on Hers Ridge, off the western side of the first day. It was a Confederate line, and those particular soldiers in that battery, they show up every once in a while, and every once in a while somebody will pick it up. But those are residual. Those are almost like a repeat, almost like a movie being rewound and shown again. And it's because of the energy that remains there. Why it happens, we really don't know. But it happens a lot. Now, it's not like actual spirit energy that is, it's from a non-living human energy, a life force that remains on this earth plane. You occasionally get that, but I'll be honest with you, for the number of deaths that occurred on a battlefield, sudden deaths, there's just not as much earthbound energy as you'd think it would be. I mean, in my experience, I think most of the earthbound energy is concentrated in some of the residents in town itself, for the most part.
Give us some examples of that.
Well, I mean, there's several taverns and several.
I'll go check them out in the next couple days.
There's several places where the Farnsworth Tavern is one that's very well known for a lot of hauntings. But even the Gettysburg College area, even though some of those buildings may not have been there at the time, that seems to be a lot of earthbound energy around there as well. But then there's a lot of places that claim to have that. And I don't doubt many of them. I think there's just so much of it in town itself that it just makes itself prevalent. But if you're out in the battlefield, and I've not come across very few. I mean, maybe a dozen over all the years I've been going out there. Every once in a while, you'll stumble across one who just comes to you and just wants to let you know that they're there, or they want to tell you show you their death state. And that happens. I mean, they will just come to you, and in my mind's eye, I can just literally see their death state, and it's not pretty. But they show you all of it.
Yeah, talk about some examples of where places you're at on the battlefield or within Gettysburg where a spirit manifests itself that you can see, and then describe kind of what you were just talking about.
Well, I think the on the battlefield itself, some of the areas where there have been a lot of reports and areas where I've also had some experiences. Devil's Den's one of them. If you've been to Devil's Den, you know of how the rock formations are forming. There's crevices down between the rocks, and those soldiers that would be on top of that large rock formation, if they were shot or injured, a lot of them would have fell in between the cracks and died in between there. And when the battle was over, they were literally taking 20 to 30 of these guys out of there. It was horrific. And in fact, people still fall into those things. They had to rescue a guy out of there a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, I think the guy had a heart attack and fell in between the rocks, and they had to come in and get him out. But no, it still happens. I've had park rangers tell me, and one in particular, he was telling me one day that he was just outside right there at the parking lot at Devil's Den, and he said two women came up to him and said, I didn't know there were any reenactments today. He kind of looked at him and said, no, there aren't any reenactments. Well, I was just over there by the wheat field, and we saw a whole regiment walking. These two women both saw it, and this was in the middle of the day, and they said, we saw a whole regiment. We didn't hear anything, but we saw them. And, that kind of stuff. And these guys who work at the park, they know it. I mean, they hear it all the time. There seems to be a couple sentries, Union sentries, that end up at Devil's Den every once in a while. They're just, they're like pickets, and they're standing there with their rifles and standing there at attention. And people see them, and they don't converse, but they see them standing there. Then they just fade off. Happens a lot up on Little Round Top as well. I have had a couple experiences with earthbounds up on the up by the 20th Main line, where the 20th Main Infantry was, and I've had a couple up there. That area is pretty heavy in energy.
That's where Joshua Lawrence.
Yeah, Joshua Chamber. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the 20th Main. That was the one that they give the credit to saving the line, saving the day for the Union on the second day of the battle. But that line extends the whole way up around into the western face of Little Round Top, and that whole line itself has a lot of energy up there. Now they had done some renovation there in the past couple of years. So it probably has waned up a bit, but I still sense a lot when I go up there, and I've had people tell me the same thing. I know several people who are somewhat sensitive, and they're still amazed by how much energy resides on Little Round Top.
So, Lon, on that topic, which I kind of piqued my interest, is what is your opinion on renovation on these imprints? I mean, does it tend to stir up energy? You've got the horror movie cliche of, the house was built on an old ancient or a Native American burial ground or something like that. Do you think that energy resides, or is it somehow mixed up, interrupted by renovation, or does it change form? What do you think happens, or what can happen? Maybe
it's hard to tell. I mean, the renovations of the battlefield, or the land, when they do landscaping, which they do occasionally, they actually start fires up there to burn off some of the underbrush as well. But they have done some renovation up around behind on the backside of Little Round Top in the past decade or so. And I really don't feel like there's been a whole lot of loss of energy up there. I mean, I still feel it now. I can't really tell to what degree it has changed.
Right.
Now, as far as people that go into some of the buildings in town, and of course, everybody does renovations in town in a lot of those buildings, it usually does stir up things. That will occur. Even to activity that occurred beyond the battle itself. There's a lot of, Gettysburg is a town of stories, really. It's just not the battle. It's a lot of stuff. And, so there's a lot of spirit energy in the whole town. And, it seems like every time somebody does some renovation on an old tavern, an old boarding house or something like that, you start to hear things. People start to, the stories start to get out. And it's pretty pervasive, actually.
I wonder, Dan has been there. How long have you been there? 2
days.
2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he went to have some experiences himself, or in hopes of kind of feeling something, seeing, just experiencing something. And I know Dan and I always talk about how unintuitive or not sensitive we are, but I think Dan has a little bit in him, maybe more so than I do. And I just want to hear what Dan and Michelle is with him there too. If you've had experiences in the past 48 hours that you want to talk about a little bit.
Well, I'm not going to speak for Michelle, although she could come on with us and tell you about what happened to her last night. What I'm thinking about was I'm listening to Lon talk about the different experiences he's had at different places. So I went to the Devil's Dens, maybe spent half hour, 45 minutes there. Nothing. I got nothing. And so I wonder, though, is what Lon is talking about, is that some of us have kind of a built-in, and the word intuitive comes to the mind. If just some of us are better at picking up stuff like that, because the Lon's description of what happened to him when he was 9 years old, that has never happened to me, and probably never will happen to me. So it's almost like all this stuff is here and could be going on, but you have to have a certain amount of radar, psychic radar, to pick it up. What would you say about that, Lon?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there are some areas on the battlefield where just people who haven't got a psychic bone in the body will have experiences.
Well, send Dan to that place, because
the Sass-covered bridge.
Yeah, that's
behind the Confederate lines. Actually, it's behind the Eisenhower Farm. That area is pretty rife with energy, and most of it's residual. But I mean, if you know the story, when the Confederates were retreating and heading back toward the Potomac and back toward Virginia, they had to go across this bridge. It was a covered bridge, and literally there were so many wounded and such that the soldiers that were dying, they just literally just put them out of the wagons and let them lay beside the creek to die. And what they were doing as well, they were having a problem with desertion. So what they were also doing was they were catching those soldiers who were going AWOL. They grabbed them and were hanging them from the rafters from that old bridge that was there, just as a signal to the other soldiers that, if you take off, you get caught. This is where you're going to be at. That place has really got a lot of strange energy. I mean, to the point where I've heard about people talking about seeing hanging bodies from the rafters of that bridge.
Yeah, I think I saw a video that addressed that, and they had a psychic walking around with these are all videos I've been watching. Psychic walking around with a historian, and they went to Sachs Bridge, and this psychic kept saying, "I feel evil. I just feel the essence of evil here." And I thought, well, that's a pretty strong kind of a thing to say. And they kept making the point about there's all kinds of graffiti. I haven't been there. All kind of graffiti written on the bridge, and stories about people going out there and trying to do seances, and so it does sound like a pretty psychically active place.
Yeah, they try to keep the place cleaned up as best they can. You do have a lot of young people that go out there and try to do some occult, divinations and such out there. But just from regular tourists who end up out there, you do get a lot of stories. And I don't like going out there myself. It's just too powerful for me.
Just bad energy.
Well, not that, but it's just a lot. It's just a lot of stuff for hanging around that, I call it like astral chatter. That's what it's almost like this energy that's trying to get your attention all the time. That people who are sensitive kind of say the same thing when they're at that area as well. Now, there's another area of the battlefield on the other side, right before you get to Culp Hill, called Spangler Spring.
Yeah, I think we might have been around that
And
day.
there is a white lady, they call her, that shows up there occasionally. I have seen her at least four times, but it's residual energy. But it's at night, and we used to sit out there as kids. I swear, even when I was driving, we used to pull up there, and we'd sit out there, and this white apparition would literally come from the back of the spring and just float beside the spring out onto the road and across the road. And it would do it maybe once a night or something, or whatever night it seemed to, be the right conditions. But I have literally seen it 4 times.
And when you say lady in white, it's a lady dressed in white?
Yeah, it looks like a lady with that has maybe white hair and a white crepe dress or something on her. You don't see her walking; it's mostly floating, but you can see it's a female form. And that's something that's fairly well known.
Well, that would catch your attention, all right.
When you say, when we use the term residual, it implies residing somewhere, right? It's present somewhere. What's your best guess as to what this medium is? Pun not intended there, but where do they reside then? What is your theory on that, Lon?
Well, they just stay within our earth plane, though it's something that has no life force to it, has no real energy to it. It's an imprint, and it's I think what causes a lot of these things is the actual energy of the person who's actually watching it. It's almost like, they become part of it, and they kind of feed into it, and then it shows itself. I may be wrong about that. Residual energy is not really anything to do with life energy. It's just something that's imprinted. And, I guess under the right conditions, it will show up. But, as far as being able to detect something like that, no, you can't do that. It's just something that shows itself. It's, most apparitions are like this. They're just something that actually show up under right conditions in the ether, or,
It's more like an echo or when you think about what an imprint is, like maybe in clay or something, a footprint.
Yeah.
It is really the absence. It's the absence of material, isn't it? When you're talking about a paw print, we have a veterinary hospital. We make paw prints, in clay. It's really the absence of material that's there. So what you're saying is that you can basically say that it's not energy in the form that we're used to in terms of physical energy, but it's somehow carved out an impression in a certain medium.
Yeah, it's a non-corporeal being. I mean, that's the easiest way to say what it is.
Tell us about any of the other incidents you've had on the battlefield, or things that you've tried to remote view later after you learned that skill.
Well, I mean, as far as remote viewing goes, it was mostly trying to assess actual history as opposed to paranormal. When you talk about the battles, you talk about, when you get into the history of it and try to figure out where units were and stuff like that. That's mostly what I did as far as removing on the battlefield. There wasn't anything to do with paranormal activity. But, occasionally I have done some remote viewing for cases I've been involved with. But as far as actually a non-case basis, it was nothing to do with paranormal. Somebody would ask me, well, was this and this actually, did this unit actually, was this there at this time during the battle, or was it somewhere else? It's a good tool to be able to figure that out, to assess the actual, so-called written history, though, after 100 and some years, history seemed to get skewed in some way. But yeah, I mean, that's mostly what I have done.
So do you get paid for what you do?
No.
You just do it because you're interested?
I take donations, but quite frankly, I don't charge folks. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time now. I've been involved with cases for certain cases, one particular case for 8 years now.
Wow.
I do a lot of aftercare, if it's a possession case or a really bad infestation case. And actually, I'd say 90% of the people who call me in to help them have got abilities themselves. And in many of these instances, they have children who are also gifted. And I do a lot of work with kids. I do a lot of work with children who have psychic abilities and just don't understand what it is. And we try to explain it to them. I try to explain it to them one-on-one, and bring the parents in to so when they see certain things and when they experience certain things, they got an idea of what it is. Try not to be afraid of it. And as most children can see or sense actual earthbound energy. They're uncorrupted minds. Nobody's been telling them yet that they can't see this, and they pick up on it. There are a lot of times when kids will come out and say, "Oh, I've seen a monster here, a monster there, or something." Well, they just don't know what they're looking at. And but I don't know how much of that I had when I was younger. I don't remember any of that. But I do run across a lot of kids who do experience that.
We had Barry Taff, who you may or may not know on.
Yeah, I know Barry. I know Barry really well.
Yeah, he was on talking about the entity case. And one of the things that really surprised me about that case was the fact his conclusion seemed to be that the woman and maybe her family were causing a lot of the weird stuff that was going on in the house, plus the woman's sexual assault. That was actually coming from the mind of either the woman or the family. And that,
I think he's right about that. I think the Doris Blither case was a lot of thought form manifestation. That she herself, just like a poltergeist. A poltergeist is basically a thought form manifestation. And I think that's and of course he was with the UCLA parapsychology unit there, and him and Barry Conrad basically found that thing, and they kind of brought the thought form tulpa theories to light for the most part. People wouldn't understand what a poltergeist was. They just thought it was a spirit, a really bad spirit that made a hell of a lot of noise. And for the most part, and almost in every case, it's a thought form manifestation by a living person who just doesn't know that they're subconsciously manifesting this being. And those cases are pretty tough. It normally you have to have the person itself understand what's going on so they can end the actual haunting. In Doris Blither's case, I think that I think Barry tried to make that make her know that came forth with that, but I think she was tormented for the rest of her life with that.
Yeah, it seems like what I remember about that story. Dave, do you have any other questions about Gettysburg? Because I have a tendency to want to take this in a little different direction.
Well, you know me, I'm interested in the kind of the big picture, trying to tie things together between this phenomenon and other ones that we've discussed. And I think there's a common thread that, and it sounds like Lon is on board with that idea too, is what my question always is: who is able to manifest these things and why? And at what point are we dealing with a physical entity or some other sort of intelligence that is autonomously, creating these phenomena? Or is it all in the human mind? That's always the big question for me, is what causes these sorts of seemingly random effects and events to happen. And it's just a question that the more people we talk to, the less clear it becomes, I think. It's always a mystery of what the triggers are. And obviously, if we could do it at will, it would be a scientific experiment. And, we'd say, well, we solved that. Let's move on to the next thing. But we're not even close to that. Although remote viewing, I know there's a lot of good research in that particular technique. So I'd like to hear Lon talk a little bit more about his remote viewing projects. And we could even go back to, I'm sure the three of us remember the Art Bell days and Ed Dames and a lot of those guys who made news. Maybe it's been 20 years by now. If you want to get into some of that, Lon, and I've always been fascinated with Mars too. I know there were efforts to remote view Mars and try to see if there's a history there. Just, you could, we don't need to stay on Gettysburg, but if you want to riff a little on remote viewing, I'm up for that.
The history of remote viewing, especially that was used with the CIA and other entities of the government and military. Mm-hmm. From my understanding, from people I have talked to, now I've never talked to Ed Dames personally, but I've talked to a few other folks who were not necessarily involved with the group, but they were very close to it. I told you I was trained by a retired MI6 remote viewer. Mm-hmm. So, who was actually involved with the capture of Saddam Hussein. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they had retired not long after that had happened. So, anyway, it was used for a lot of different things. Now, you talk about off-world remote viewing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, I was put through the protocol of one of those situations once. Mm-hmm. And it was it was scary as hell, to be honest with you. I was, it was during my training, and the monitor literally set out the coordinates, and when you go through the different steps, you form what they call an ideogram. It's basically like automatic writing, and you form a series of shapes and such where you identify if it's a linear or a mountain or land or water and such. But anyway, as I got through the phases, it was becoming apparent that I wasn't on Earth. Now, I never did figure out where the hell they thought they sent me to. What I do remember, in this one particular session, I was in a cavern. I mean, this place was huge. I mean, when you walk through this cave actually, but it was just massive, and the landscape around there was nothing nothing on Earth. Mm-hmm. It was all reddish, and it had a red, atmosphere and such. But when you go through a remote view, supposedly you cannot be seen. Your subconscious is taken over, and so anyway, I was walking through this cavern, and this cavern, I mean, all my senses were open, so I was smelling some not so good odors in there, and the walls were kind of wet and kind of slimy, and that type of thing. But I continued to move through, and I don't know how far I got through, but I came to an area where there looked like there were several humans there performing tasks at some type of board or some type of apparatus. I don't know what it was. There seemed to be a glass panel that they were looking at something, but I never did see anything. But as I was standing there, this huge Tyrannosaurus Rex looking thing started moving through. It literally looked like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I mean, this thing stood about 15 foot high. It had a uniform on, but it looked like a friggin' dinosaur. Long tail and everything, the big head and the teeth, and but this thing, it looked like it knew what was going on. And as I'm looking at this thing, it's looking in my direction, and I'm looking at it, and I start to get the sense that this thing is seeing me. Mm-hmm. And I think the monitor picked up on it. And she pulled me out of there pretty damn quick. I'm glad she did, because I don't know what was going to happen. I did not feel safe at all. I know that. And this thing started eyeing me up and started looking at me kind of bizarre like. I don't know what it saw, but it noticed whatever it was showing, of me. So that is one session I definitely remember.
It seems like I've heard that account. Have you been on Coast
I
to Coast?
I have mentioned it a couple times,
On Coast to Coast, or
yep.
Yeah, that may be what I'm remembering.
I think I did mention on Coast to Coast one time anyway.
It really stuck with me, the fact that, like you said, remote viewing is supposed to be, you're just observing. You're not detectable as the observer, but in this case, the entity that was being observed had an ability to feel your viewing, which of course scared the crap out of you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'm fairly new at this. I'm training, and it's my job to determine what area I am, what's going on. And when they're asking me, what do you see? And I tell them what I see, and this thing is looking at me like it sees me, it's time to get me out of there. And they did. And I don't know what could have happened. From people I have talked to and mentioned this to, they say it does happen on occasion. I don't know. I mean, if it's hard for me to understand how anyone who had done something like this, if somebody could have actually been killed or hurt in some way by it. I don't know if that's the case or not.
Well, yeah, my thought is that, as we all know, anyone who's been looking at this stuff for as long as probably the three of us have, you realize that the truth is not easily discerned. There are plenty of people and organizations that don't want the truth to be known, to move squarely into conspiracy land. I think that's a given, once you look at some of the stuff. So what techniques do we have potentially to understand what's going on without needing an official mouthpiece telling us what's happening? I think remote viewing is a promising tool for seeing behind the scenes, the things that you're not going to find out in the news or from government press releases or whatever. But then again, you've just shown that even that seems to be laced with potential danger, because if the viewee is aware of the viewer, then, maybe that's not a safe tool. Maybe that's part of the reason we're not supposed to know about it, because there's potentially some dangerous aspect of it. So what have you seen while remote viewing that was later confirmed by others or confirmed by independent discoveries, revelations, or anything like that you can share?
Well, yeah, if it's a case where I am involved with individuals in doing a private case, I'm not going to disclose that. I won't normally do that unless I'm told that it's okay to do that. But no.
But in generalities, I mean, have you seen confirmation that even made you go, whoa, okay?
Well,
I'm convinced that this is cool.
I guess you could say that. I mean, I do believe that I have seen probably enough to believe that we are not alone. Mm-hmm. If you want to say that. You probably am aware of my case I've been involved with out in Chicago now. Seems like forever.
The Chicago O'Hare Mothman type of things. Yeah.
And we're involved with some contact as far as that's concerned. And more recently, several of the individuals on our team have been contacted by these beings. And they hadn't actually initiated contact with us. And so, this is something, this is baby steps, basically. We're just taking the information we're getting. And I can't say we're real remote viewing with that. This is something much different. This is more, I hate to say psychic, but I guess that's the closest you can get to it. That there are some people within our group who can literally get answers verbally, or something that is imprinted into their mind they can distinguish what an answer would be. But we're working on that. I can't really say a whole lot about it as of yet. It's a work in progress. But I think we're getting much closer to the enigma of this phenomena. This whole Chicago Mothman, O'Hara Mothman, winged humanoid thing has been going on now, well, for a long time. And in particular, we had the 3 cases in 2011 in South Chicago. Then starting in 2017, the winged humanoid phenomenon started picking up throughout Chicago, and it has actually gone out into the suburbs and beyond that. And as of October 2019, I'd say that 80 to 90% of the sightings have been at O'Hara International. And this is something that there are certain areas of that airport where we have been concentrating at. There is a cemetery at O'Hara that many people don't realize. When they built O'Hara, there was an old cemetery. Actually, there were a couple of them there, but they moved most of them except this Rest Haven Cemetery. And over the years, we have had a lot of questions about what was going on there. And in the past 2 months or so, we're starting to get some answers, to the point where we've had people go into the cemetery and have literally had contact with these beings. They call themselves the unseen ones. They don't like to be called extraterrestrial. They don't like to be called alien. They don't mind being called ultra-terrestrial because they move within dimensions beyond our Earth plane. And, that's why they're making themselves known to us. Now, I think this is, like I said, this is a work in progress. We can put the information out there, but we really can't say that it's an absolute, this is absolute truth of the information. Why this is happening. Because we really don't know why this is happening yet. They really have been forthcoming in that respect. But we're learning every day, and this, for people who know anything about Chicago's had a very heavy history of paranormal activity, and especially UFO activity. Mm-hmm. And the ley lines in Chicago and those that extend outside of Chicago, from Chicago, are extensive. There are literally hundreds of ley lines that extend northwest and just southwest of Chicago for hundreds of miles. And the energy in Chicago is it's just unbelievable. It's very strong. Now, are these beings the same beings as like the Mothman at Point Pleasant? I don't know. It could be some type of faction, some type of other being. I don't think they're the same, but I think they may come from a place, a dimension very similar. In fact, I think the Mothman from Point Pleasant was actually a summoned being from a strong spiritual energy, indigenous energy, at Point Pleasant, in particular at the West Virginia Ordnance Works area. I feel that indigenous spirit is kind of threatened by all the active young adults and such hanging around that TNT plant area. And I think that being was summoned. I think it was summoned as a guardian, as a sentinel. And it was there to protect this energy, this spirit. So, I don't think that's what's going on in Chicago. But I think, and the Mothman moniker really should, I didn't start calling it the thing out in Chicago, the Mothman. The press actually did that. And to avoid confusion, I just went along with it. But, and I really hate calling it that. But, when everybody and his brother is using it, you almost got to go along with it.
Lon, do you know Bill Grabowski? Is that name familiar?
Not necessarily.
Okay, he was on our show too, and he talked a lot about Mothman. He's spent a lot of time in West Virginia. You might want to have a conversation with him because he had some interesting theories about Mothman, not necessarily being a cryptid, but being more of a psyops kind of a thing, which I'm hearing a little bit about what you're talking about with that. We'd be glad to forward his contact information. The other thing, and we're getting to a point where we've got about 15 minutes, and then we're going to have to release Lon from captivity because we've had him over an hour and a half. I wanted to go back to Gettysburg, but not for the ghosts kind of stuff. And I think maybe in some emails we touched on this. Sightings, UFO sightings, cryptid sightings on or near Gettysburg.
That's what I was. I'm glad you took us there, Dan, because
I tell you this.
There's some weirdness
part of
going
Pennsylvania.
on there.
This south central part of Pennsylvania, York County, Adams County, and further west. First of all, as far as cryptid activity goes, there's a lot of it. I had a winged humanoid sighting in 1988 near here, near where I live, actually. There's been a lot of winged humanoid sightings in this area. Bigfoot activity, upright canine activity. Michaud State Forest is just west of Gettysburg, about 15 miles west. It's a huge forested area that extends south close to the Maryland line, north up into Cumberland County, and it's had a lot of Bigfoot activity. I've know individuals who have research areas within Misha, and there's been a lot of accounts of people seeing beings. I don't know how you came into Gettysburg, but if you drove on Route 30, Lincoln Way West, you came through Misha. Caledonia State Park is there as well. A lot of the Bigfoot sightings are of people seeing Bigfoot literally grabbing roadkill and throwing, deer have been hit by cars and taking them in the middle of the night and seeing them put them over the shoulder and walk into the woods with them. That's where most of the sightings come from. There have been sightings of Bigfoot on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about.
There have been. I mean, the area.
Do you know where?
Well, the area around, where the peach orchard is.
Yeah.
You go east of Peach Orchard, heading towards the wheat field and up toward Little Round Top. Those areas there have had some Bigfoot activity. People have seen Bigfoot, but the whole area itself is conducive to Bigfoot activity. So yeah, I mean, cryptids are no stranger. UFOs. There have been multiple sightings above the battlefield for years.
It just seems to be a hot spot. That's
a hot spot.
Phrase that comes back. And Pennsylvania has a pretty interesting history as far as weirdness too. You talk about the Philadelphia experiment, and haven't there been UFO flaps? I mean, what are some of the more? You get some triangle activity.
Yeah,
I've read so many UFO books. I'm trying to get them all straight in my head.
Well, of course, you had the 1973 flap, which Stan Gordon mentions a lot, and there was a lot of UFO and Bigfoot activity, together out in the Chestnut Ridge area, out in Fayette County, up into Westmoreland County, in that area. Very big hot spot. Lots of other cryptid activity there as well. Most of the UFO sightings that are recorded now, especially the triangular craft, are seen throughout the Susquehanna River Valley, and north and south, and down into Maryland. It's also a lot of Bigfoot activity along the river as well. So this is Pennsylvania's got a lot to offer. Even going up into Allegheny County, and then these upright canines which Witkowski and I have been investigating since 2013. We're up to about 25 sightings and encounters in mostly central Pennsylvania, in an area what we call the Lake and Loop. Now, it's a large area, but it extends from the Allegheny State Forest southeast into York County, almost to the Maryland line. So we've We've been pretty busy. I mean, this state keeps us very busy, actually.
And a lot of, again, I try to take the view of a skeptic and say, well, come on, how can you have all these things happening in one place? And I'm thinking, well, doesn't that actually support a theory of the idea that these things are connected? Their paranormal is connected. And Dan and I used to argue about whether Bigfoot could be a paranormal being, and I always disagreed. I thought, no, he's separate from UFOs or something. But over the years, he's convinced me, and we've had enough guests make the correlation between these cryptids and the UFO phenomenon. I'm still not sure how it's connected, but clearly,
I think most of the cryptid activity in this part of the country is supernatural. And when I say that, I'm not saying that they aren't on this earth plane, showing themselves and that they aren't flesh and blood. I think they are flesh and blood, but I think they have the ability to move in and out between dimensions. Does that make them extraterrestrial? Who knows? I mean, I'm not sure, but I think that there are certain areas in this country where I believe there are indigenous Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or whatever you want to call these hominids. North Pacific, where
we live,
up where
Washington
you are, guys,
State,
up there. I'm quite sure that's an indigenous area. There's a lot of sightings, a lot of family group sightings. You go down to Florida, you go down along the Gulf Coast, there are areas where I believe there are indigenous beings there. But I'd say for the most part, just like in the upper Midwest, in the eastern part of the United States and into the Mid-Atlantic, and I think most of what people see are supernatural beings. Now, can I prove that? No, I can't prove that. But it just seems that they're here and then they're gone. It's not like we can, we really track them anywhere. And, of course, Pennsylvania in itself is like 51% forested area. So there's a lot of wilderness out there. I'm not saying that there are areas where people haven't set foot, but there's a lot of places where things can hide. So who knows? That argument, the whole supernatural Bigfoot, supernatural cryptid versus flesh and blood indigenous. I mean, that's an argument that's going to be going on for eons, I'm afraid, until we actually, come up with some evidence that it's true. Say we find a body. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not supernatural, because I think the Bigfoot sightings are of flesh and blood beings, but do they have an ability to cloak themselves or move in and out of dimensions or use portals or whatever? Who knows?
You mentioned Butch Witkowski. I think I saw, maybe it was an Arcane Radio show with him on there.
That's my show. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Butch and I have been working together for a while now. Yeah.
So I wonder if he might be a good guest for us to have on, particularly talking about dogmen.
Yeah.
Because I find that interesting.
Yeah. All you got to do is ask. He'll come on.
Okay. That's cool. Dave, what else we have for Lon? Anything else? Hello? Uh-oh.
I see he's muted.
Oh, what happened?
Did he turn his microphone off?
I don't have his video. I don't have my
he's
video.
on now.
Sorry, guys, I'm here.
Okay. We thought maybe you were abducted by either Confederate soldiers or Bigfoot. What else? Do you have anything else for Lon? Do you have anything else for Lon?
Sorry, yeah, I did. I got a call from work. I'm still technically at work, but I really would prefer to be doing interviews about weird stuff, and that shows where my priorities are, obviously.
Yeah.
So I muted myself temporarily. I'm just glad that Gettysburg in itself is interesting enough for a whole show, but I am glad that we kind of moved into different areas again to show the potential connections between ghosts and cryptids and maybe UFOs and all that. It's satisfying to me to kind of go full circle and connect the dots as much as we can. So I do appreciate that Lon was interested in going in that direction too. You never quite know about guests where they're willing to venture off.
I'm an open book,
but he's an open book. Yeah. So
I mean, if you go into Fams of Monsters and look at what I've looked into over the years, and then the team site at cryptidhunters.org, and some of the stuff we've done over the years. I mean, yeah, I'm an open book. I mean, there's not much I really haven't touched on.
What does it mean to be a Fortean or Fortean? I'm almost perplexed at how to pronounce that.
The name Fortean comes from Charles Fort, who was,
right.
he was basically an author journalist that was just interested in the unexplained. And, at the turn of the century, he was just really not really the authority, but he wrote books that kind of caught people's attention and got people thinking about what is really, what's really going on. I mean, why do things happen the way they do? So, that name, that moniker Fortean is in honor of him.
And he carried a certain amount of respect and authority too, that legitimized.
Absolutely. He did. He wasn't considered a quack back then either. Yeah. So let's say, he did have a bit of respect to what he was doing. And, so when he was, so I'm kind of fascinated by his whole career. And that's why I just consider myself someone who just questions everything and just looks into everything. And I think Fortean researcher kind of covers that.
Dave and I belong to something called the Olympia Fortean Society, which is just a Facebook group. I might have even sent an invitation to you. Are you trying to develop a system of Fortean researchers? Did I pick up that somewhere on the Phantoms and Monster website, or maybe I was just hallucinating?
Yeah, I have. Our group is the Phantoms and Monsters Fortean Research Team. And if you go to cryptidhunters.org, our team is listed there. The cases that we are involved with are posted there.
Is there any way we could help you with that?
Sure. Yeah, I can. You can become an affiliate. That's no problem.
Okay, maybe that's
because I do need somebody out there anyway. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
there's some weird stuff going on here.
Do me a favor and send me an email.
Okay.
And tell me a little bit about what y'all do, and I'll make you affiliates. That's no problem. I always need people I can. If I get a report and I need somebody with boots on the ground to look into something, sure, we can do that.
Well, and I don't know that everybody's willing or ready to do that in that group, but some of us, including me, used to be MUFON field investigators. So it's kind of like, well, we like to look into weird stuff. So I'll keep that in mind. Lon, thank you, dude. I really have admired what you've done, and I from afar, and to meet you is great, and to have your experiences, just it tells me so much more about Gettysburg than all these places that I've been to. So I really want to thank you for taking time out to hang out with us for a while.
Yeah, I used to do tours out there for years.
Oh, wow. You would have been a great tour guide.
I tell you, I still do tours. It's usually celebrity tours, people who, people who don't want the regular tour they get from the Park Service. So it invariably gets to me, and they will ask me to take them out, and I took a lot of celebrities, a lot of well-known people on private tours out there over the years, and you kind of get to the spots where where there's a lot of weird stuff going on, but that's mostly what they're looking for. They're not looking for the standard history. They're just looking for the weirdness.
Yeah. Well, if I ever come back, I might
that sounds familiar.
Your services.
Yeah.
Okay.
The tour, the weirdness tour. That's the one that
weirdness tour of Gettysburg. That would be. Okay, Lon, thanks again very much.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
It was fun talking.
We'll stay in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.